collaboration with the Camden Garden Club, who've been wonderful partners. And today, I'd specifically like to point out Julia Sagasar, who we should applaud for things. Without them, we'd be sitting on the floor in the dark staring at each other.
And she got the pointer working.
She's miraculous. And you don't see her if you're on Zoom, but know that she's the backbone of the success of this whole program. We hope you'll enjoy our program and show your support by making a donation either online or we've got a donation jar in the back of the room by the cookies. Your gift will go towards our educational programming as well as our scholarships. So thank you for that. Today, we're pleased to welcome Irene Barber. As an educator, horticulturalist, landscape designer, and registered horticultural therapist, Irene believes that we are all part of nature and truly need to be connected to it rather than competing against it. So today, let's not talk about the deer. Until recently, Irene managed the adult education program at Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens, and many of you, I'm sure, have taken her classes. I know that I have. Currently, Irene owns Greenscapes Design, LLC, under which she consults and designs for residential and public settings to produce vibrant landscaped ecosystems that actively support clean air and water, biodiversity, and healthy soils. Today, Irene will culminate our series, Revisiting Your Landscape, by talking about the organic process of design and what to do should things not go quite according to your plan. For those of you on Zoom, you know now to put your questions into the chat, and we'll get to those at the end. Welcome, Irene.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to try standing for a little bit until I can't stand anymore because I just had knee replacement surgery. So tomorrow will be week 3 for me. So. And the whole point of it is so I can kneel in the garden. Yeah, right. No joke. So I came to this topic with Allison, actually cooperating or collaborating our ideas together about this series that you've been perhaps listening to all of it. Have you all watched all 5? This will be the 5th one. Mm-hmm. Raise your hands, those of you who have. Okay, so about half the room here. So I'm going to refer to some of those previous sessions or presentations as well, a little bit of that. And the benefit of having these multiple sessions too is that you hear repetition intentionally so that it truly instills, the value of garden design, the principles of garden design, some fundamentals of garden design, and the fact that there is a true organic process right now that we're going to talk about today in garden designing. And so the reference of having those 4 previous ones and Sharon's with us today, thank you, Sharon, for attending today, is that as much as you make all this planning and you want to plan ahead, there's going to be some challenges along the way that arise that you didn't intend for, and you have to think on your feet, okay? Think on your toes. So that's what we're going to start discussing today. I also just wanted to share, I do have a lot of images because I believe images, I'm a visual person, so garden design is all about visual as much as it is about the tangible experience that we have in getting our hands in the soil. So what I want to do is reference some features in each of my slides, not necessarily everything about every slide, because that can take over 5 hours, but we'll try to highlight a few points. Here, I just wanted to mention that this photo was taken just this past late fall, like December 2nd, thereabouts. And I intentionally, so I not only design gardens, but I oversee the installation if I don't install them myself with contractors. And then I help with the nurturing, not maintenance. Get that word out of your heads. Nurturing the gardens, working with their evolutionary process, their successional processes, and managing with them. Expecting them to have some trial and errors, expecting them to have insect or predatory issues down the road, and what you're going to do about that. So I work with these projects for at least 5 years, typically. And that way, the design process is not just about, I draw this, I install it, and then I send a maintenance plan. No. we work with the homeowner or with the client to really understand how to engage with it and be a part of the garden instead of feeling like somebody else has to take care of it. So I attract people who love to be integrated into their systems, into their gardens. And if you're not there yet and you still think you may want to get there, I hope today's presentation will encourage you to be more hands-on, if anything. So anyway, so some of these grasses here, I really wanted to keep up because of their winter interest, but also for the wildlife to benefit. And the wildlife is going to, hello.
What do you want?
Quiet the lights.
You want the lights down a little?
Yes.
Okay.
The wildlife is going to inhabit into spaces, and some are going to be desirable wildlife in our minds, and some of them are going to be considered undesirable. What would be considered undesirable in your minds for winter overwintering? Yes, in the back. Deer, okay. That's the only time we're talking about them. What else?
Voles.
Voles. Voles and moles are the number, and winter mice are the top three concerning rodents, so to speak, in winter habitat that is left untouched like this. Okay, so a lot of people will say, oh, gotta cut it all back so then we don't have any issues with those rodents to overwinter and seek habitat in that, or seek coverage in that environment. The challenge there, though, is they're going to go somewhere else and they're going to riddle somewhere else as well. So ideally, we plant diverse systems that can tolerate. You have a threshold, you have a field capacity. So if you can create a much more diverse vegetative setting that allows for them to nibble here, house a little here, but they're not going to decimate an area, then you have a balance. You've created, or you're helping to create a balance, and your expectations are put into check. Make sense? Okay. So that's a learning curve in garden design. And with your mind saying, oh, I really love these grasses left up in the winter. They have such great skeletal features. Well, we know in Maine, particularly, by January, those grasses are going to be like this, okay? So we want to, I animate, by the way. We want to keep in mind that there's going to be those, changes, we need, as a designer, you need to be as educated of a horticulturist or a gardener as possible, instead of seeing these as statues, okay? So, realize the design with new possibilities and new opportunities when realities come into play. So that's just referring to that organic process, being adaptable, being flexible, everything you can be without being restrictive, essentially. So why do you want to do a garden design in the first place? And Sharon mentioned design is really incredible. It's just very valuable for your whole long-term composition of a garden. It helps to bring all the components together if you have a comprehensive plan in mind, but that's not necessarily going to happen in just one sit down and creating one concept. You can have multiple concepts, and your concepts can adjust or adapt and change as you, the gardener and designer, develop your skill sets and develop your knowledge base. So I was just talking to Destry, who I did a design for 20 some odd years ago. And I just told her, I was amazed that you're here, that I said, that was in my early years. Hoping that, if anything went wrong, that there would be a room for forgiveness. Because as professionals, we always are growing. We're always learning as well. So I just wanted to reference the fact that we always need to just be as open-minded and adaptable as possible. But garden designing makes you think about your priorities as well. Instead of that wish list, oh, I really want that hot tub. Oh, I really want that sauna. Or I really want that outdoor shower. Is it a priority? Is it realistic in the setting that you have? And what does it take for that to be achieved? So, and see it and maybe in stages. So if your budget doesn't allow for all these wish list items to come into play right off the bat, think of your garden design as a progress of implementation in stages. So prioritize is ideally what you want to go with. Don't just go to the nursery or the garden center or the spa store and have reflexes and impulses. You're going to end up regretting those. So go with somewhat of a in this case, somewhat of a restrictive or conservative idea of going into it. So it's not just about creating and following a map plan. It's about the implementation, the problem solving, and the management. So problem solving is one of my favorite things to do. And that's why I love garden design so much, because I'm always doing problem solving. Anyone else feel that way? No, not many of you? Oh, I don't think so. I don't think you're telling the truth. And then the other thing about garden design, landscape design, is it's not a linear process. It is circular, if not spiral. And the reason why I say spiral, this is my new exciting thing that I've come across in my own education, is that instead of seeing spiral as out of control, spiral, think of the design of a spiral. It's progressing towards something. It's not just, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. If anything, a circle does that. So think about your progress as moving in, and it could even be a spider web where you're going this way. If you're really a distracted person, like I sometimes am, the thing is that, as you can probably tell by my talking, is that when you are starting one aspect of your design, you get inspired about another aspect, and then that inspires you about another aspect, and then that inspires you about this. And so you're constantly connecting the dots. So it becomes this web of ideas and problem solving together in a course of however long you have to work on this design, whether it's a consulting gig, or if you are the designer and you live in this property and it's in perpetuity. But it's just the fact is it's not just I start from point A and I end in point C. You're taking this presentation because you want to, or you're attending this presentation because you want to maybe glean new inspirations, or you're interested in getting reinforcements of what you already know, and that's good. But inspirations is what we get every day when we are getting all of these information inputs coming in, and we're realizing how do those relate to what I want to perceive or produce as a good garden designer. So looking at your trees, looking at your shrubs, looking at the deer browsing, looking at everything that is having some kind of response, and how you can take cues of those processes into your garden design. And then you can also, get inspiration from your neighbors who are doing something, but you never want to copy, because your garden is your garden. It's got to be an individual representation of you. Gardens are a personal reflection. And if it's a public garden, then it's got to be a reflection of the community, of the place, so that there's a sense of belonging. So embrace. Have you ever heard the expression hugged? I feel hugged by this garden. I feel hugged by this tree. When you go out into this amphitheater, the surrounding trees hug you while you look at the harbor view. That is a maternal and newborn instinct, where we are hugged by our parents when we come out of the womb. And so we sustain that psychological desire. So using words like hugging, embracing, incorporating are really going to reference your connection to the space and your feeling of safety and sanctuary. So thinking of your garden as if it feels really, or your landscape, it feels really barren, that is probably going to have a negative. There's some good things about it, like you feel open-minded, free, and then sometimes it feels daunting and scary and overwhelming. So it's going to be a personality trait here that you're going to relate to. So this is what Allison and I were talking about. If unforeseen circumstances arise during the actual implementation phases of designing a garden, then you are on the problem-solving opportunity. So don't see it as an obstacle, see it as an opportunity. And I believe it was Todd who mentioned earlier that somebody asked a question about, all these great gardens that he showed, these landscapes were quite extensive, expansive, and very elaborate. How can these systems or these features that he shared be translated into smaller settings? And the smaller the setting, the more exciting it is, the more creative you can be for making it feel much more dynamic than it may start to, that you may feel in the initial phase. So you can take all of these examples of what those large estates have and just put them into a proportionate scale of the space that you are working within. So if you see that big, beautiful monolithic boulder and you're like, oh, I wish that could come into my landscape, but it's only 20 by 20. Then you think about, how can I create a miniature example of that? Okay, so there are those opportunities. Don't see it as, oh, I can't do that. That won't work in my property. It's how you will create a microcosm of what you are enjoying at somebody else's property, like at the Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens, where we have boatloads of stuff, and you're like, how do I bring this to my house? And I already mentioned the circular. Any questions, by the way? I'm happy to answer questions along the way. I hate, just like Sharon said last week, it's not fun when you're just talking. Yes.
I have a question about design and about the process.
Sure.
How important is it if you tend to work in the spots? Do you have to have an overall, if you're just trying to work your way?
It's a great question. Erica?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great question. So could people on Zoom hear that? Okay.
Well, actually, I don't.
Okay. So the question was, if you have rooms in your landscape or on your property, and you particularly want to work on one area, does that mean you have to create a design for all the other areas? So a master plan is valuable so that those rooms can speak to one another, that they can have transition. So whether it's through a hedge that creates the transition, which is an abrupt transition, a delineation, or if it's just a fence, or if it's your vegetable garden going into an ornamental garden, a pathway creates that transition. So ideally, yes, I think it doesn't have to be a master plan that's done to the detail of everything, but it has to have a conceptual plan that gives you the explanation of how those rooms are being used and how you move through the space. You want to make sure that you're moving through the space, that what you create relates to how you use the space efficiently, not just effectively, but efficiently. So one thing I think about is when I create a vegetable garden or a kitchen garden. By the way, we should see them as kitchen gardens. Why? Because we want to be inclusive of all edible plants, not just veggies, okay? And tomatoes, what are they? They're fruit. They're not veggies. Okay, anyways. So, but if I'm creating that kitchen garden, do I want it to be an afterthought, even though it's a priority? So I need to bring that forward and have that closer to my movement of how I use the space, and then have maybe my meditation garden a little farther away, so that you're not working them out in just separate times. You're actually thinking about that holistic experience. Does that answer your question, Erica?
It does, and you also have to take into account where it will work.
Exactly. So
the vegetable garden may only go into one place.
Exactly.
So you kind of just are going to put it there regardless of your overall concept.
So important.
That's the land that will support it.
Right.
So
right.
Then you kind of
So
have to work with where things work and then try to get
So that's a very ecological and realistic approach to it, that you're not creating a major alteration because you have a desire that garden should be right there because that's where I want to see it. If the soil is not right, if the sun is not right, you're not going to make all these major alterations, because that, well, in my opinion, you shouldn't, because that's not an ecological or responsible approach to the landscape that is enabling your project right
It's a
now.
dialogue.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. God, you're a great filler.
A dialogue? Ooh.
Yeah, dialogue
You
with
can have a dialogue.
the landscape, with the setting, totally. And that's actually something to think about when you are doing a design for yourself. If you are going to jump into that, make sure you have Erica or friends of yours or neighbors of yours to come over. Doesn't have to be somebody you have to hire, but somebody who you trust and won't say just what you want to hear, but somebody who's honest with you and can give you another perspective so that you get out of your own mind sometimes. So a professional can come in with some objectives, but we all have our biases, okay? That's human nature. So we want to have, maybe 2 friends, have a garden party for all I care, and have a questionnaire to present to your friends, and then they can respond to you with some anonymity if they don't feel like sharing it. Okay, so variables that are, come into play. We all think about budget because most of us don't have an endless pool. It's not like we're going to the Olive Garden and have an endless salad bowl of salad. Okay, we don't have an endless bowl of money here. So it's really important that there are things that you can do and there are things that you need to hire somebody else to do. And then that's where you come into prioritizing in your budget. Soil depths is not just soil and then depths, but soil depths, but depths of the space as well, in the sense of the spatial depth, the spatial availability. Plant costs, man, have they been going, right? And so when you can identify the plant growth rates of certain plants, then you can determine, I'll just get that one from seed. It germinates like that. Or that one I'll get from a plug. Or that one I'll get is a balled and burlap if necessary, because it's so slow growing. Okay, so there's going to be plant costs and availabilities that are going to constantly fluctuate. Rock and hardscape costs. I know Emma shared a lot of beautiful examples of hardscape. So did Todd. I'm sorry, I didn't get to see David's presentation because he didn't record it. But I wish I could have. But I do know David, and he is one of my favorite garden designers in the sense of he emphasizes layers. Layers. Y'all read The Layered Garden by now? Gotta read that book. Anyways, hardscape and plants, when they are combined, people will say, oh gosh, I really want to have this beautiful stone wall, or I really want to have this front walk or a pathway, blah, 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 blah. And then it comes time for the plants. Oh shoot, I have no money left for the plants. So remember, get your cost assessments, get your cost estimates in before you start actually executing the project. And then labor. So there's specialists and there are degrees of specialists and what their availability is. So if you want to have a garden design or even an aspect of your garden design installed, be sensible about timing, okay? And you don't do it in the mud season typically, or you don't do it when it's really dry out. There's going to be challenges of Mother Nature telling you what's sensible and when it is, what's not sensible and when it is sensible. But it's also about when the labor is going to be available to you. So if you have a qualified landscape gardener, they're probably going to have a backlog of work for months to potentially years. So that's where it's beneficial to educate yourself and be as willing to do as much as you can on your own. However, then it comes into play what is really feasible and sustainable for your body to do on your own. So then other variables that come into play are new inspirations and ideas constantly coming at you. Oh gosh, I went to this museum garden. I went to the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum and I love this sculpture. I need to have that. And they're like, wait, priorities, okay? Remember, hold yourself to your position as much as you can, and just, if it's meant to be, it will happen. Don't force it all the time. And one thing I love to say to everyone I talk to, and even my clients, I say to them, there is no one perfect design, okay? I may come up with a design that you love, and you may have some ideas that you want to share with me that will make that garden even better. So as Erica said, it's a dialogue. There's an exchange constantly happening, but you have to start with something. So again, we already said budget. Now, one thing I just wanted to mention, DIY is not always the most cost-saving option. Why?
You make more mistakes.
You make more mistakes. That's part of some of the fun for some people. As gardeners, we like to do trial and error sometimes. But when it's really costly or you're going to break your back over it, it's not worth it. So it's ideal to have somebody support you who may already have lots of years of experience. Okay, so just remember that DIY is not always the most sensible. So that's where you evaluate what can be done by contractors. And then I don't know if actually, did any of the presenters, I don't remember this, actually discuss money?
Not really.
Okay. I think we could have a good series on creating budgets for garden design. What would you like? That's the next one, Allison.
Okay.
It's funny, I put $1 sign here. I put a $1 sign here, but really it should go to $1 to $5 signs there, right? Up to however, because it really varies on the practitioner you're going to work with. So I strongly recommend a minimum of 2 bids per contracting specialist in order to Jolly John it. Okay. If you can get a better price from somebody else, but then you have to realize just because they may be less expensive, does that actually mean, remember the expression, you pay what you get, you pay for what you get. So remember that if you build a relationship of trust, that's the most important thing to do, is building a relationship of trust. So sometimes the money is going to be somewhere in the middle, and that would ideally be a benefit to securing that relationship with the contractor. My favorite thing to do is finding out what's on site already and utilizing what's on site. Those spruce logs are great repurposing trees. Okay, though I actually like cardboard. So I use cardboard every so often, but what I do is I wet it down a lot. And then I also will put rocks on it so that it stays in place while I wet it. And then I put the material, the soil or the compost or the mulch over that. But the other thing is you do want to know about the amount of tape or glue that's in the cardboard, because if you're doing organic, then the cardboard usually has a lot of synthetic glues that will not actually sustain the organic practices. So
And staples.
And the staples inside that. So make sure you get as much of that off as possible. Hold on one more second. I'm just going to finish this and you can. So using anything that you've got, like an old sink, whether you have some old pots and crack those and use those for porosity, just think about what you have in your hoarding shed and, sift through that and determine what can be used in your landscape. First, the woman in the back, what's your name?
Laura.
Laura.
So what are your thoughts on solarization?
If that's the only way to get rid of the equisetum, which is mare's tail, for an 18-month to 2-year process, then go for it. But use the heaviest quality impervious plastic you have to. Anything porous will not work. And then you can reuse that plastic if you had to, because you don't want to just use basic. First off, one thing I just want to preface is I despise landscape fabric. I despise it. I don't use it. The only time I use it is for drip edges, and I'll explain that a little bit more, and for the backs of stone walls so that the fines don't seep through the wall and push the wall out in winter periods. Otherwise, and those are all porous, but otherwise, when you solarize, the issue there is not only are you contributing to the plastic world, but you're also you're shutting down oxygen to the biology in the soil. You're killing the biology in the soil. Not only are you killing the weed seeds that you want to kill, you're also killing the biology. So in order to revitalize that biology, you have to re-inoculate it with lots of good microorganisms, et cetera. So there's a lot of after impact, after effect of recovery that you go through. It will help maybe knock the population of equisetum or whatever, maybe bishop's weed that you guys all talked about last week for a period of time, but you have to overplant as soon as you possibly can in order to shelter the seeds from being able to regerminate. Yes?
I'm talking about turf removal.
Oh, actually, in that case, sorry, I went way far for you. So I would just do the cardboard, the newspaper, and then plant into that. And I do a lot of, so that's not necessarily solarization. That's just called smothering. Solarization is where you use the heat of the impervious material to create a sheltered, hot environment that sweats out and kills all of the microorganisms and seeds beneath it in the soil. Smothering is where you're just killing off the root layer of some of the grass, but beneficially, you're not harming the beneficials in that soil. So that is ideal. Yeah. Yeah. And just remember, plant high when you are So what I do is I also do a lot of pocket planting where I'll plant a shrub and then I'll carve out maybe the circumference of the drip line of that shrub, take out the soil, the grass of that, but then leave the grass that's outside the drip line. And then I put newspaper around that, sheets of it. I mean, like tons of foils, like tons of sheets of it, maybe 5, 6 of them, or the cardboard, and then, construction paperboard, the non-toxic stuff. That's great stuff. Then you put your material, your mulch or your wood chips or whatever over that. But you then have to remember to plant high because all of that comes up to a 2-inch surface higher than what your original soil line is. So always give it they say plant proud, right? So, Erica.
It was just a quick question about the cardboard. If you're worried about, this cardboard obviously isn't perfect when it comes to chemicals either, no matter what kind of cardboard you find, and you can strip it down, it's still cardboard. If you put it on a path next to a raised bed in a vegetable garden, how safe is the dirt and the compost on the other side of the raised bed from the path and the cardboard?
Yeah. What's the leaching radius outside? Cardboard? That I don't know the studies of, but that's a great cooperative extension question. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Lots to cover. Oh, by the way, I want to mention, take that away from today. If you can, anything, that. Alternatives. Okay, so plants, that's why we're all here. We love plants. So there are always going to be new considerations coming at you, or you thinking about and realizing, oh, that shouldn't work. Oh, that needs to go over there. Or so, yes, I actually believe in every inch matters. Okay, the plants that have a sculptural appeal, every inch matters. So think about the placement of your plants and their habit and their growth rate. There are great alternatives as well. So maybe you have this desire to have this gorgeous homestrup arborvitae, okay? But somebody said deer. So what are they magnets to? Deer love arborvitae. So what are some alternatives? Sharon mentioned last week Chemacypris, which is false cypress. That is a Japanese and Western species. Typically, they don't, but if there's a hungry deer out there, as Monhegan and Idaho have attested, they will eat it. They will eat junipers if they have to sometimes, okay? So there's never going to be a guarantee for sure, but there's definitely some benefits of some plants that are not necessarily as desirable. There is a native Chamaecyparis here, by the way, called Chamaecyparis thyoides, coastal Atlantic cedar. Guess where we're living? Coastal Atlantic Maine. So you will definitely be able to have that. It's a blue-green Chamaecyparis, by the way. But if you, so what my point is like, if you need something narrow, something sculptural, think about the list of plants that achieve it. So it's not about one particular plant. It's the structure of that plant. It's the texture of that plant. It's the color of that plant. Then there's going to be an assortment of plants to choose from. And then you have to whittle down of those plants, what are going to be realistic to the settings availability, okay, or permission of the use of this space. So placing them, shifting them, you may have it on a plan already, but then in reality, things come to light. You realize, oh, they didn't have as big of a plan as I wanted, or they had it too big and I have to make some adjustments. I don't have the quantities that I need. So there's going to be a lot of potential alterations along the way, but then think about, well, if that plant's not available this year, I'll grow it from seed and I'll plant it myself next year, things like that. So being really attuned to opportunities and possibilities to progress from when you have your original concept, your original plan, and then how you start to adapt that plan to the setting. Here are some inspirations of seasonal considerations. And this is a major reason of consideration in your planning process. We frequently overlook the fact that these plants are performing more than just three seasons. They're performing for us year round in some capacity, whether it's a root capacity, in the sense that they are preventing erosion in early spring, late winter, or if they're supporting good soil biology. So they're performing year round. It's just how they're performing for you. If it's above ground or within ground, not below ground, by the way, within the ground, okay? So I just want to reference some of those details that we sometimes overlook. We've got cinnamon fern, or actually this is interrupted fern. This is, sorry people in the Zoom, this is Golden Shadows Cornus alternifolia, which is a cultivar of our native alternate leaf dogwood. And then this is a woodland peony. This is Larix decidua, which is weeping larch. This is a European larch. And what I'm showing you here are just the immersions, you know, things that you can think about what you're excited about in 2 months, a month and a half happening here. We've got magnolia. This is actually a Leonard. This is a Leonard Messel. This is a small Leonard Messel magnolia. And this is the flower emerging out of the furry bud there. And then this purple one is, anyone know? Yes, Mertensia virginiana, or virginica, sorry. Virginia bluebells, for those who aren't familiar with it. It is more hardy these days to Maine as we're having our changing climate scenarios happening. You'll see it readily available in the southern Maine markets. I think Plants Unlimited, I think Buck is starting to sell it up here. I don't know if you sell it, Sharon. But it is actually a beneficial plant to grow from seed or plugs. Don't get a finished plant because it's one of those plants that loves symbiotic relationships within the soil. So if you try to introduce this at a really mature state in the soil, it will probably disregard or die soon after. So make sure it's a young species and plenty of them, not just one of them. Get a good carpet. Mertensia virginica, Virginia bluebells, and that's the bud.
It is an ephemeral, though.
It is an ephemeral, but actually, I have it in my shade garden, and the foliage stays.
Really? It's staying?
It stays up. And then this one on the left is not a native, but it's anemone. tomentosa, and this is the emergence. And I just look at those fine details, everybody. I just want to get excited by that. And then these are, this is the cornelian cherry that Sharon mentioned last week. It is not native. It is native to Eastern Europe, Cornus mas, and it does have edible fruits. And I will say one thing I want to be thoughtful of, even though it's not considered invasive of any sort, and I don't want to say invasive, but ecologically potentially challenging, is that it is readily reseeding in some woods in Lincoln County. So just be monitoring. We as gardeners have to monitor our gardens and the woods around our gardens all the time, okay? Just like that burning bush you want to miss. Here's the woodland poppy. I have to tell you, so those of you who don't go, you have to go to Sharon's nursery, but also go to Fernwood. If you haven't been to Fernwood, you got to go to Fernwood. I got the woodland poppy from there. That's the Virginia bluebells in flower. And the more it's in shade, the more pale blue it's going to be. And then what is that flower on the top right? Think a tree.
It's not a maple.
It is. Acer rubrum. That's our native red maple. We forget it flowers. Those are, it's not just Norway maples that have those yellow flowers. These have beautiful red flowers, and just keep an eye on those little red flowers when they'll be here in about a month and a half, hopefully. Sanguinea canadensis, bloodroot. Okay, and that's a single petal, it's not a double, so it will attract the beneficials, it will attract our pollinators a lot more readily than double petals. Double petals, just if you want lots of robust flowers and you're like, oh, I want that double, and you've planned for that in your garden design, but then you're like, oh, I really want beneficials and pollinators, well then you gotta go for the straight or the single petaled, because it's this that they're looking for, not the petals for the beneficials. This is epimedium. This is, oh my God, roseum.
Oh.
It's roseum. What is the common name?
Toadflax.
Toadflax, thank you. I never remember the common name of that one, but
Yeah.
that's a great border plant. I use this in shade gardens. Okay, so if you have grass and then you have your garden border, don't put dianthus, don't put threaded leaves against the grass. Why? Because the grass is going to grow into those threaded leaf plants. Put these broad leaf, very dense habit, overarching border plants that grow up to 12 to 18 inches, and they will be your dominant weed suppression right there. Easy peasy. And then they determine your edge. You don't have to keep edging every year, okay? You can use that for your advantage. This is anemone thalictroides, woodland anemone, and it's a beautiful ephemeral as well, and that does go dormant, and so does the sanguinea. They go dormant frequently in the mid to late summer.
Hold on, what's the yellow one? Looks like.
Oh, I'm sorry, witch hazel. Sorry, and that is pallida. That is a hybrid intermedia. These are my flowers in my house, around my garden and in my property. So, anyone know what this red ball is up there?
Man.
Close. So hydrastis. This is golden seal. So this is a wonderful medicinal, and this is the seed in August. And this will go dormant if it's not in shade in the midsummer. So make sure you have it as a woodland plant on the edge of your woods, but it populates kind of like podophyllum, like mayapple. So just keep that in mind. It also, it's holistic, as Doug Tallamy would say. If you're not familiar with Doug Tallamy and holistic, get it? Holes. So, we want our plants to actually have impurities, imperfections like this, because we know we're feeding our native wildlife. This is the golden shadows. So these pictures are showing you what's happening in the late season when things are going dormant. They're shutting down, they're starting to reproduce. And so we have the golden shadows. What was gold before is now like a stained glass of translucent pink and green. So think about a pagoda. It's a shelter. So this is a sheltered pagoda, golden shadows dogwood. This is Rosa virginiana. Went up to Cape Breton this fall, and oh my God, the Rosa virginiana up there is insane. It's gorgeous. And those cranberries. So this is our native rose. Get rid of Rosa rugosa and put Rosa virginiana in that place. Because it's native, it's also incredibly aggressive to the shorelines where a lot of people use Rosa rugosa. This is our native. Rugosa rose is not beach plum wild rose. It is beach plum. It's not wild to us. It's wild to Japan. So just thinking of that, if you want that hybrid, beautiful, Blanc de Coubert, Rose rugosa, just keep in mind of monitoring it and make sure that it just doesn't go all over the place. Panicum virgatum, that's north wind. And that is a cultivar of our native switchgrass. And then this is the wood poppy, the woodland poppy in seed. Is that crazy, that seed? That's impressive. So collect those seeds before the birds and the chipmunks. The chipmunks will definitely get these. Red squirrels will also get these. And then some people may say, why am I taking a picture of scirpus, which is a bulrush, or it's relative to carex, which is sedge, but it's scirpus, has a horrible name. But what I love is the pendulous habit that it has and the seed collection and how it has such a lovely, graceful cluster to it. And when the wind captures that, this loves wet soil. You know how I can tell in this image here, besides it being at my house? Behind it is sensitive fern. Sensitive fern. So read your landscape. If you don't know the conditions, read the plants. There's a great book called Read the Weeds. If you read those indicator species, you will learn so much about your landscape. This is winter hazel, also known as Disanthus cercidophilus. And this is an edge woodland shrub. It's native to northeastern, but not necessarily Maine. Has a beautiful heart-shaped leaf. That's why it's called cercidophilus, because it's cercis, meaning heart. And it's looks similar to a katsura tree, but it's in a shrub form. So if you can't get that katsura tree because it's too big, get the Disanthus cercidophilus. And then the Stewardia seed head that opened up, and now it's this beautiful ornament in the winter landscape.
What is that one called?
Stewardia.
They're hardy up here?
Yep. Oh, yeah. Benefits of climate change. Okay. Kind of a sarcastic point, but yes. Top left relates to this shrub. This is called Lindera benzoin, also known as northern spice bush. I believe, Sharon, you mentioned it last week. These are the flowers. And I planted these in Freeport. I planted 6 of them. The following year, I got the spice bush swallowtail to arrive. This is its instar. It doesn't normally look orange. This is the larva before it becomes a black and blue iridescent butterfly. It's beautiful. And then, so remembering plants for their properties, as I know, Allison, you mentioned we're not talking deer again, but we are, because when you say, this is the plan, this is what I always love to ask clients is, so do you have any deer around? I don't think so. I never see them. I look at the property. There's nothing on the property. That's why they don't have any deer around. And then you start planting things in. Oh my God, I have so many deer. So talk to your neighbors before you make these responses, okay? Learn if they have any deer problems. Keep looking at those winter tracks that are surrounding your opening, okay? And then there are plants that not necessarily ward off, but they almost become masking odors surrounding your otherwise attractive plants. So anything with really pungent or acidic aromas are really beneficial of masking the otherwise attractive odor of the plants that deer typically go for. So making a hedge of northern bayberry will help support your vegetable garden being protected. Thank you. So there's the list of native, non-native. These are some suggestions. They're not necessarily a complete suggestion, a complete list, but they are not only there to ward off, but most importantly, attracting what we want. And those that you may not realize what we want are the smallest of insects that are our pollinators. Honeybees are not our only pollinators. So remember what those mason bees or those little larva fly, etc. Those are amazing pollinators. And they also become predatory to the insects that we don't want. So we need to sustain those balances. So having these varieties of plants and their performing timeline is going to be your management practice. And if you want this list later on, I can send it to Alice, or actually you have this as a recording so you can refer back to it too. That's the berry, as it's just starting to develop, of the Lindera benzoin. So if you don't want to plant cornelian cherry because, like I just said, it's not native, this is a great alternative. Lindera benzoin, northern spice bush, used in teas, etc. And fennel. You know, fennel, California, it's like annoying, but for us, we love it. So, and it attracts as well as it wards off unwanted. And I don't say weeds, I just say undesirable or unexpected, okay? Because they are desirable in most situations. It's just in the situation that you have a particular plan for. So thinking about plants and their sizes, going to Fedco or going to Crystal Lake Farm, which, by the way, Fedco buys from. So just talk to her. Or going to, just nurseries where they have smaller trees.
Soil and water conservation.
Soil and water conservation. But potted is good to a point where, as Sharon mentioned, you want to, and to be honest, most nursery people don't have enough staff to take the pot out or take the plant out of the pot. So you just do it yourself. If you can figure it out, and if you can't lift it, put it on the side, peel it on the ground if you have to, and look at the root ball in that capacity. If you start seeing roots coming up into the coir weed fabric, then you also know that it's most likely going to be root bound. But if you can get these trees in the June up to June period, then you know for the most part that they were recently potted and they are just getting established. Ideally, bare root is great, but if you can do potted, and then if you have something where it's been a slow growing species, then the larger balled and burlap is okay, but you have to do more remedial support for it. You have to really help make sure that it's going to acclimate. It takes about 5 years for a tree to acclimate after it's been taken out of its original growing spot, where they've only taken a third of the root system when they take a balled and burlap tree out of the nursery ground, that is. So just keep in mind. So herbaceous, one of my favorite things to do is buy plugs. You get a lot of bang for your buck. And if you don't have a wholesale account at nurseries, more and more nurseries are starting to sell, even Van Berkom are starting to sell plug trays instead of finished product. Or you get quartz, the next size up if necessary. Try to reduce the amount of large sizes because they acclimate so much better when they're young, and they will perform and be more resilient long term, and you don't have to fertilize them, or not fertilize, but water them as frequently. So another thing about repurposing is when you cut down trees, save your wood chips and use them as much as you can. Even if you don't have a path, put them in a pile nearby. And if you say, oh, I have such a small urban property, then if you can find a neighbor or a farm to house them for you, and then you can pick them up at a later time, that would be a great solution. But don't bring them to the landfill, please. It's a waste. Here are some examples of plugs. And then these are the 1 gallons that I have bought as well from, so I shop all over the place, all over the state into New Hampshire, because I don't rely on just one source because it's just not sustainable. So I pick and choose where I go. And so when you have problem solving, thinking on your feet, you think, oh, I'll just go to the nearest nursery. They're not necessarily going to have everything. So be willing to check out different nurseries. Personally, I've never done mail order. I don't know what mail order is like as far as fungal properties that happen when they're wrapped up in newspaper and then they're, so you all can attest to that and tell me if you've done it before. I'll get them in the plugs here so that they're at least within a permeable environment, but sometimes even the plug trays, if they put a newspaper layer over and it's been really wet and it's been in a box for a week, then I return it because it's just not going to be viable for me any longer. But this is at the Farnsworth Museum. We planted this in 2018. That's in June 19th. That's in August of the same year.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I have a question about this lovely,
You have a question about, I'm sorry?
this lovely sort of river of stone you've
Oh,
created.
yes, I'm sorry, I didn't mention that. So that is a, functionally, it's a drip edge. Aesthetically, we've made it into a dry riverbed.
And how do you keep the weeds out of that? Because it looks so lovely and when it's new. But then
It's really deep with lots of rock. So lots of air. And so when it's not, filled with water from the roof line, which by the way, a lot of rain falling, if you look on a drip edge, nothing's growing under that, right?
Mhm.
Because of the impact that the rain has. So that's one mechanism of death, of suppression. And then the other is when you have the most amount of pore spaces, larger pore spaces, the weed seeds can't germinate successfully. If you have smaller rock, you have smaller pore spaces, weed seeds will germinate because the fines will accumulate and they will with that said, they do toss this out, or not out, they toss it up every 2 years to kind of open it up. Because the vegetation that we don't cut, we typically don't cut everything back, or I suggest that they don't. I don't manage it anymore. And so the fines of the vegetation can start to decay in there. And just like a rain garden, you don't want a lot of actual organic matter into a rain garden because it will clog those pores up and then it will actually prevent the good drainage. So in this case, it's a fine line, but great question. Yes, Laura?
Did you put a base layer of sand or anything?
No, we put a non-woven filter fabric. This is the only time I put non-woven filter fabric below 3 inches of this 2-inch rock.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is there anything on the edge that keeps things from moving?
No, it's just the push. It's hard to tell, but the rocks kind of climb up on the edges a little bit, retaining it. And then really there is a, oh, I know, I'm missing a slide. Watch this. Oh, darn it. Oh, there it is. So this is an example of when we didn't make the riverbed wide enough. And so there's a stream of water hitting this Joe Pye weed and then bouncing, and then all the mulch is washing away. So we need to make that, so learning curve.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of curves, did you do the curb plantings at the farm?
Yes, which we're redoing.
Good. I'm glad to hear that because they were so beautiful.
Yeah, we're redoing them. That's a subject unto itself. So here we are with an existing property that I'm approaching this winter. This was in November, recent project. There's the wellhead surrounded by the rocks there. We have 3 inches of gravel on top of ledge. So there's a complication for you. And so these are challenges, but possibilities, opportunities, okay? So we come up with 4 different schematics. So they have a lot of similarities, but there's always going to be a little bit of variation. And a lot of it, and I told the client initially, are you ready for this? Are you ready? And I said to them, this has got to be done in phases because in order to remediate that property from all of the stress that it's undergone and all of the demolition that it's undergone, these plants are not gonna be a quick fix. We have to see them in a progressive implementation phase. So getting structural components, getting soils, there are very limited soils in this setting, but we're going to do some, elevation we're going to have to bring in some elevations, but they're going to be retained by those spruce logs, by wattles, not by tons of rock all over the place. Rock will be used in different areas, but the whole point is I give this example, and I do all my designing by hand, which is, fun, because then you have to keep drawing. You can't just take a computer program and erase that tree and put in something else. So there's time, but that's the creative aspect of it that I appreciate. So anyways, so coming up with these scenarios and then, saying, oh, I like this about this plan, but I like that about that plan. Can we marry those two things? And so that's where we come together with putting 4 scenarios or 3 scenarios, and we marry some aspects of each into a final concept. Yes.
So that's a scary thought. 3 inches of gravel over ledge.
Mm-hmm.
So you basically have no soil. So you're going to be building structures in which you can put soil, into which trees can grow. I mean, you've got to recreate the earth there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
to a point. I will say there, what's really fun is when you probe the ground with an auger, you can see where even the ledge is never like this. It's like that. So when you auger, you spot dig and realize, oh, I can put a tree here. Oh, I can't put one there. I can put one here. I can put one there. Da 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 da. And then so that's where the organic process really comes into play. Is you're doing designing kind of on the spot.
wow.
They call it re-engineering design, basically.
When
Really
you said
complicated.
wattle, are you talking about the woven fencing?
The socks, the filter socks.
Oh,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
Could you explain that? Filters?
I'll show you. Okay, so before I do that, so this is an example of ledge. This is a grassy area. Dies out in July. It looks like crud. They want to use this, but they never really use this. It's hot. They're never sitting here, but where are they sitting? In the shade. And over there is a rotting pergola. And it's only a half pergola. So we talk about revisiting, what could this space really be? And so I got inspired by hillsides of coastal Maine. I got inspired by Astiku. I got inspired by native gardens of Acadia or wild gardens of Acadia. I get inspired by all these different locations that I travel. And then I figure out, do these resonate? Do these work within certain applications and settings? And we take cues from what this landscape allows us to and the dialogue that we have with the landscape. So and this was, I hired a landscape contractor who has he loves toys, and he has a drone. And so we were able to take an image there and map out some of the routes of access. But when all that grass is gone, so this is what it looks like on the plan view. I mean, on the elevation view. By the way, this is called a plan view. Okay, and then this is when you're on the elevation, when you're on the ground. And we see these ledge outcroppings here. And you're like, God, how am I going to create anything other than grass here? What else can grow? Well, if you have a few tools and toys, and we created this allows water to pass through and run into their already curtain drain that they have around the house. And it actually goes into an underground drain that just goes into the groundwater, I should say. It does not daylight. Try not to daylight if you can. There is a webbed, this is where sometimes plastic does help out. There's a webbed grid in here that resists the pea stone from moving so much that you can walk on it without feeling like you're going to break your knees. And it allows for water to permeate through without pea stone getting packed down. So it stabilizes quite a bit, and it allows water to really just infiltrate rather than just get daylighted through a PVC pipe that so many people do. My one mission in life, as a garden designer, if I had to have one, is no more PVC pipes and no more daylighting. Just let the groundwater go back into the ground. So these are examples of, working within the confines, realizing when we start stripping the sod away, that ledge is a lot bigger than we always think, And then there's this you can't tell here, but this is actually from here to here, it's an 18-inch drop. So this is its own little waterway. So when it rains, this becomes a really cool water feature. Not putting in a whole fancy recirculating water feature, just working within the naturally occurring systems. I did get inspired by the fact that we're near a beach, and I had to put in my little dune experience over here. And then, and the pergola, rebuilt the pergola, and used cedar from Thorndike, Maine, right up there. And again, we wanted that done in June. That guy didn't have the cedar when we wanted it. So guess what? It happened in October. So you just have to be patient. Sometimes patience is truly virtuous. By the way, in this image, you may not be able to see it clearly. For those of you in Zoom world, number 5, picture number 5, see how I actually numbered them. There is an angelica plant. I'm not angelica, ricinus, castor bean. Anyone grow castor bean? Castor bean is the best rodenticide, okay? And rodent deterrent, and it repels. And so that's it in July, that small little quart-sized plant. That's it in October. So they become jungle plants. They become enormous 8-foot tall annuals. These are annuals. So collect their seeds. If you have it near a children's garden, not the appropriate plant, because the seeds are incredibly toxic, okay? But if you're in a mature garden where there's lots of adults around, then it's a good selection.
It's architectural.
Yes, it definitely offers contrast for sure. Yes.
Yes, the first time I saw the castor oil or bean plant was up in Annapolis, up in Nova Scotia. There was a botanical garden up there.
Yeah.
They were extraordinary. Their color, the shape of the leaves.
Yep. Yeah, I know that garden exactly. And they're a zone 5B, 6A now. So that's why they can, grow it really.
They danger to animals? Pets?
Yes. So if you have dogs, I just wouldn't, anyone who likes to, don't do it. Okay, so back to Todd when he said that they numbered rocks. Well, before actually numbering the rocks and having to bring them in, we cut out cardboard and numbered the cardboard per the silhouette of the rock that it was on. And then we placed the cardboard down and then brought in the rock. So we numbered the rock, but we first organized the cardboard template. Now, a lot of people in the world of CNC or digital technology, etc., they'll do a lot of pre-cutting and then they'll fit the joints really tightly. I am not a tight joint person. I like having open joints in order for water to pass through. That's just my preference. I know we're cutting down on time here. Materials. So this is in a really challenging location in Harpswell, and we are 11 feet above sea level. And January 2024, remember that? The water was up in here. And so we had unfortunately already opened up the grass, and it was bad. I will admit that was a bad situation. But Mother Nature taught us and put us in our place. But anyways, the point of this is this grass is just like not usable. It dies out. It's really unattractive. It's not vibrant, has no biodiversity. A hedgerow of hydrangea doesn't really aesthetically do much. And then there's this railing that when you're on the deck cuts your view line. And so we take that off. Hello, take it off.
Uh-oh.
Maybe.
Cool clicker stuff.
Oh, shoot, oh, God. Okay, so that's the Quar wattle, and that's biodegradable, but it has a 5-year lifespan. It's not filled with, it's all biodegradable webbing. It's a corn gluten webbing. And then it's not cheap. They sell it by 12-foot lengths, I believe. I think each one was $150. But it's cheaper than rock. And the point is that I want these plants to eventually they're going to be the dominant retainer here. And so, but what happened was in the flood in January 2024, these were staked in, but the ledge is right there. So, staked in 18 inches. The water elevated, guess what loosens up? The stakes. The wattles went into the harbor, down up the shore, literally 200 feet up the shore. Thankfully, we were able to resurrect them and bring them back and put them back in place. Otherwise, yeah. And then a year later, besides the dying Juniper communis, Blueberry Delight. Sorry, if you love Blueberry Delight, that's not my favorite. Just get Juniper communis if you can, common juniper. Anyways, this is the wattle after a year. And that's in, as you can tell, this is spring, probably late May. And then this is the August of that year. So just thinking about all of these different, it's an ocean. You want to make sure that this landscape is going to tolerate the ebbs and flows of that shoreline. So Northern Bayberry, Rosa virginiana, dune grass. And it's not a prim and proper formal garden. It's a cottage garden on the sea. So we have to plant within the confines and limitations that environment creates. The client loves flowers though, so he adds in annuals here and there throughout the season.
Irene,
Yeah.
10 minutes.
Thank you. We have here a plan view, and this is, you kind of see, there is an outline of a septic system right here. It's dotted, and that is underground now, and the driveway has to be permeable so that it doesn't clog the septic system. And then we have a garden, and then the elevation tapers down. I didn't show you the elevation topography here because that creates even more confusion. So there's a different plan for topographic lines so that it's clear for the landscaper to establish the elevations. And then this is at planting time. So right literally underneath June 2024 is the septic system that goes over here to the far right of July 2025 driveway. So it's about 30 feet long.
Is it mounded? Is there a mound?
It's a gentle mound. It's literally, the mound is somewhat retained right here, but it drops off right here. So it's underneath that section. It's not mounded to the degree that it's on the other side because it's so porous there already, so it doesn't need to have like a big mound on all 4 sides, which is beneficial in this approach. We planted finished material, we planted plugs. The homeowner was involved, that's her weeding. We actually didn't weed, we didn't bring in any good soil. This was all the soil that was there because we wanted to use within the confines that we had. And we wanted to use the soil that existed here because that's the soil that's going to really resonate and stay and get blown around. And we just don't want to bring in a lot of organic material. And guess what? A lot of prairie plants, which is what a lot of these, not prairie plants, I'm sorry, coastal meadow plants love is drainage. So these are all plants that really like lean, mean soils, not fertile soils. And this is it in this fall. And those grasses, nice little punctuation points, they're going to decay, they're going to decline. And then in the fall, you could cut these halfway back. You could tie these. Some people tie them so they look like little statues, but then their blades don't go all over Timbuktu by April. So if you bind them up, then they'll at least stay put. But there's a number of different ways you can garden with these grasses in order for it to be somewhat manageable come spring. Sometimes, like I said, you can cut it halfway so you get some habitat growth, but you also aren't going to have reeds of grass all over the place. Again, these are the quarwattles right here, and this is an extra parking spot with a geogrid permeable base.
What is the upright?
These are Carpinus betiolifolius, which is fastigiate hop hornbeam. So it's a European hop hornbeam. It's not an American hop hornbeam. But yeah, golds and auburny, mauvey tones are definitely prevalent this time of year. The client said that she's staying here more and more late into the season, so having these late fall colors are a benefit to her. Even if she wasn't here in October, I don't really care. I want to have it for the landscape, the vegetation, the wildlife, the habitat. It's just a really great accent to have year round. And that's the approach. So I forgot to mention, I'm so sorry. Establish a purpose statement. What is your purpose? Okay, cultivate it doesn't need to be, I need to do this to make this happen. I need to do this to make this happen. It's a broad mission statement. Cultivate a vibrant, biodiverse, and naturalized landscape that aesthetically and efficiently connects a newly built guest house to the historic main house for the growing multi-generational family, whilst, sorry, my Britishness going on, whilst maintaining a sense of place and belonging to the coastal environment. Not coastal landscape, environment. Think about all of the variables in that setting. Sometimes I think landscape just makes us think about a flat, two-dimensional experience. And then you outline your objectives, your strategies. And here's the main house. And so tying that path into the front path of the house, going to the main house rather. These are different rooms. So Erica, to your point, it's important that I know what's happening over there and over here so that they connect, they speak to each other. And then these are some of the colors and textures throughout the different seasons. If you're not familiar with tuberosa, Asclepias tuberosa, also known as butterfly weed, it's a wonderful plant, but it benefits from regeneration, not mother plants returning each year and every year. It's the regeneration. It's the baby sports from year to year to year. That will be your productive return, new generations. This is an example of in August. This is an example of October of the same picture here. Tiger Eye sumac is a cultivar of our native sumac. I love our native sumac, but when the space doesn't allow for large 20-foot shrubs, I'll do the 10-foot shrub. And the homeowner really wanted to have a cutting garden. So all of these flowers are not just for her, they're also for the diverse pollinators. So the before and after, these are the confines that we come into a job where it's, you think, God, how can I make this into anything beautiful? And it takes time, patience, lots of managing of all different stakeholders and processes. And 2 years later, it looks like that, which I think is kind of nice. You may not, but I do. So the setting is in a floodplain. The house had to be elevated 6 feet high. The homeowner wanted it year round. So, they could have just done a lot of insulation and made the house a 4-foot story house, but they wanted the house to feel like it belonged to the landscape. So we created terraces and unified the house to the existing landscape instead of feeling like it was up on stilts and a big concrete surrounding and that you would have to lattice or trellis or whatever. and it would just be too over dominant. So we tried to immerse it into the landscape by bringing the elevations up to it. It's not an easy process when the boundaries of the neighbors are literally 15 feet away. And so, yes, the homeowner may say, oh, I want all natural rock. Well, sometimes in the confines that you have, natural rock is not going to be the solution. So we use precast of Maine and put in these 3x4 blocks, and they are structurally incredibly strong. And then we were able to plant trees on the elevation above those blocks. So there's an alley of tri-flowered maple up there. But we use those spruce logs, we use oak logs, we use hemlock logs, logs that will last for at least 15 years. You can take the bark off and they will actually last longer. It's an aesthetic choice. The bark typically just starts to flake off on its own as well, as a mechanism of longevity. And we used them over here as well. So this is the first spring after planting. And yes, we use balled and burlap, but we also used a lot of potted, and we used plugs. When you are thinking about, oh, I forgot about that compost bin that I really wanted in my property. Remember that in your planning process. Where's your detritus going to go? Where is your debris going to go if you're in a suburban or formal neighborhood area? Make it as aesthetically pleasing as possible. And if you have to work within the confines and have a compromise of some compost staying on site and some compost having to go off site, that's better than no compost at all. So ideally, we got this as a 3-bin, and it's actually metal. And it allows the homeowner who is scared to compost to start composting without being overwhelmed. And so we saved a spot for the potential opportunity of a compost going in. And then that following year, we put in the compost bin. And, love the what do you call that? A duck blind net here over the propane tank. Does anyone notice that? There's the compost bin. I got that at Gardener Supply, half off. And when you have confines of these tight spaces, then you think narrow, tall for privacy, not just fences, but what plants can really tolerate these tight environments. Don't plant right up against the house. That's over with. Plant away from the house so you can see the plants from your windows, not look down to see the plants. Just look straight up. There they are. Maintain. Your carpenters will love you. Your builders will love you because whoever's working on the house will love you because then they have all this space to put their ladders and there's ventilation, etc. So, and remember, HVAC is a big thing nowadays. So having that aeration, circulation around HVAC is valuable, but also your heat vents, your dryer vents, all of that. Just don't jam things up against your foundation unless it's an herbaceous plant. Herbaceous is the way to go with our homes in New England because they can tolerate snow being accumulating against them or on top of them. Think about your paths, and anyone recognize these paths? Where they are at? Who goes to Astaku?
Yeah.
Astaku. Astaku is picture number 1 on the left. Wild Gardens of Acadia, picture number 2. Wild Gardens of Acadia, picture number 3. Down on the lower middle. Picture number 4 to the far right, top left, is a garden in Freeport. This is called coarse crusher dust or stone dust. This is not a typical stone dust. This is a 3/8 chipped stone dust. Any of you use it before?
What about, have you ever used oyster shells or chicken grit?
Chicken grit.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate?
We use it in the Mid-Atlantic.
What is chicken grit?
Chicken grit is the grit that you feed poultry.
Oh, so it's the husks?
It's in their crawl.
Yeah, like shelled stone.
Oh, okay. Obviously, I have not used that. Shells, to a degree, the problem with shells is that they slip and move around. They don't lock together unless they're really broken down. which takes a lot of pulverizing. Whereas this has already gone through a lot of screening and crushed. It's a byproduct from the quarry products. So yes.
What's the reddish half
Yeah,
material in the center?
Dangerous red pine needles. But so you can walk on it when it's dry, but don't walk on it when it's really wet. No, the other way around. When it's wet, it's good because it stays in place. When it's really dry, it just moves around. So if you're not stable on your feet, don't use white pine or red pine needles for a path. You could definitely use them for mulch, especially for acidic gardens, but just recommend, it's the right, right plant for the right place, right product for the right application. What I love about these designs here, by the way, is look what they're using for the edging. They're using old cedar logs or juniper logs, not more than 4 inches in caliper. They're using willow or red maple sapling, and they're bundling them up and binding them and twining them and then pegging them in and creating that curvilinear formation. Utilizing those natural features if you want a definite edge. If you don't need a definite edge like here, I like to have plants spilling over the garden. That's a great Dixter kind of thing. And it just really, and this is the same path, by the way, a year later, because it's moist. And so moss is growing over that stone, that coarse stone dust. You can use just regular gravel and the moss will grow right over that too. But it's also knowing the paths and what they're being used for. Are they secondary? Are they tertiary? Are they priority? This is like a tertiary because it's for the vegetable garden. And we didn't want to put something hardscape right away. The money wasn't there. And also when you open up a setting so much and you take all that organic material out and now you just have a boatload of soil exposed, that's not really ecological. So think about supporting, these roots are supporting biology that will then help these vegetables on the side. But then you have to think about seed orientation and regeneration. So if you don't mow this clover or this grass frequently enough or edging it, all of that will go in there in no time flat. Okay, so you have to have a management plan that is realistic to your abilities. So maybe you decide, I'm going to make that a wood chip path once these plants really establish and become a sanctuary for me and for just the overall environment. Maybe it's a priority path, a main entrance path, and you want to have large pavers that really secure a good pace of somebody walking so that they don't have to be like, boop, boop, For me, I would feel more secure on that path because I don't have a lot of forgiveness at this point in my life. Whereas this one, I'd be like, So be thoughtful about how you're using and how you're placing out your stone if you're going to be using stone or whatever material. Wood chips, the challenge with wood chips is that they really need to be aged at least 18 months so that they have a good decaying point where they really settle into the grade. If you use fresh wood chips and you walk on those and you're using a wheelbarrow, it's very frustrating. So here's what Laura was mentioning. This is the curb garden at Farnsworth a few years ago, where the red dot is. And this is where the rock has become, it collects all the fines and the salt and the sand from that road. And so that's a management plan that we have to keep in mind. And that was planned in the planning stages to realize, okay, every 2 years or every 3 years, we have to sift this out. The reason why we put that here is because pedestrians don't stay on paths. So even though, and you can see there's no crosswalk here, but guess what? There's plenty of, wet walkers going across the street whenever they want, wherever they want. So we want to make sure we're accommodating to that flexibility, but that they're not going to walk on plants that are right on the edge. Because if you ever put plants right on the edge of those pavers in a public setting, they're going to be dead within a couple weeks. So you give this forgiveness zone. That's what we call that, a forgiveness zone. Then these are images. Maybe some of you recognize this. This is actually on C Street here. This is a project I'll be working with. If anyone wants to work with me on it, raise your hand. These are pavers that have started to fail because the edge has not been retained. Number 2, for those of you on Zoom. So when you don't have edging, if it's either a block or metal edging,
Please no plastic edging because that just goes up and down. Then the pavers will start to break away and fall away, and then it becomes all these nuisances after 5 years or so. This was permeable, the top number 1 picture, but all the fines collected over years, people didn't maintain it. They didn't vacuum the fines out. So now it's no longer permeable and it's going into their person's garage. All the water is going into their garage. Because C Street comes around the corner, then this is a road right where the number 1 is that goes into some marina. And so all the water just flows into that direction. This is at the Botanical Gardens where the red arrow is. This is an example of, yes, they put an edge, but not a deep enough edge to retain the paver. And so it has started to settle down and it's, got to be repaired. So you have to have a maintenance plan. I know I said maintenance. I will say maintenance with hardscape. I will say maintenance with hardscape. You have to have some kind of plan in place for hardscape, sustainability, whatever you want to call it, in order to see it last long into 30 years. If you just leave it be, you're going to have your expectations dwindled. Then this is an example on the number 6 where that is actually not a paver of concrete. That is a recycled tire brick made by a company called Vast Enterprises from Wisconsin or Michigan, and I believe AZAC bought the rights of it. It is 90% recycled tires. It has a UV resistance of 30 years, and it's in a stamped grid, and it's over their septic tank. So we have to be able to come take it out in these stamped grids, and then it's also on the in the setback of 150-foot waterway. 150-foot setback against the lake, and so you have to have permeable applications in that environment. So problem solving is key, and thinking about there's so many options out there. And what I love about this, also number 6, is when I walk on it, it's cushy to my joints, and the dog loves it because it doesn't heat up. If you can't do natural stone, like most of these are not natural stone, and you have to, and because of maybe cost prohibition, I know I said that wrong, or labor or material availability, and you go with pavers of some sort. This is called Arbel. This is made by Belgard, I think, or Teco Block, and it has a kind of organic form to it. It's actually 3 pieces makes 1 piece. And it has a natural organic form to it, but it also resonates the color of New England. This is not sandstone that looks like from Arizona. Relate your colors of your hardscapes to the topography that you're working within. Special features offer not only aesthetic but function. Frank Lloyd Wright, form over function. Function over form. Form is function. And there are really lots of beautiful examples of how you can make that larger riverbed that I did at Farnsworth and make it into a smaller application here. And then in the background, we put in sedges so that it's not a shrub, but we have a little greenery in the back. I don't have pictures of that. I forgot to put them in. Too many pictures, too many things to see. But think about, this is an example of elevating. So in Wild Gardens of Acadia, some areas, they don't have a lot of soil depth, believe it or not. And so they elevated with these boulders, and then they put in this bed of Arctostaphylos and scrub oak, and they made this beautiful little topiary sanctuary right there with native plants. Think about if you are inundated with tons of water, how to utilize the water, work with the water, make it into a beautiful feature instead of seeing it as a waste product. Remember to sit in your gardens. Features like this are really fundamental to your enjoyment of your garden. Bringing in different materials that are not necessarily natural or organic, like the aluminum beds here, or zinc beds, I should say, that are coated. They were great for heating, up the garden plants faster, yielding results faster, but they still don't, prevent predation of raccoons or skunks, etc. So you still have a learning curve there. Bring a beautiful soapstone sink out into your garden. Everybody should do that, right? Remember the features. These are the pieces that kind of complete the whole design. And they may come in as a new reality or a new development, a new, inspiration later on, but your garden is supposed to allow for that, opportunity to arise. You can make these adjustments. You may say, wow, this is really quite a messy, northern sea oats garden grass experience. But if we contrast it with something much more structurally strong and modern, then they complement each other. So think of contrasting is complementary. And, if you have OCD, a topiary is perfect for you in the garden. Succulents for the brown thumb people. Pagoda lanterns are great for that Japanese aesthetic. This is an edible garden of kale and green globe artichoke, a beautiful edible arrangement that actually produces food for you. And then if you love the kind of English, impressionistic, French impressionistic aesthetic, maybe something whimsy of that nature is your style. And I'm going to cut it there because there's just too much. And I do want to just reference, think about how these, solutions with these areas that are, kind of challenged, they have declined over the years. How can you revitalize them? How can you repurpose them and make them into not a septic tank feature, but instead a Japanese garden fountain? That's what it was. This is in Bar Harbor, by the way, right on, what's the one, when it's facing towards Hancock, is that Frenchman's Bay? Towards Scudic Harbor? I think it is. So this is the construction process of taking out, so this tank was failed, so they moved the tank, and so we could make it into a new setting, a new purpose. And this is, again, still beginning. So this is that non-woven filter fabric, non-woven. It's wool, and it does not break or rip unless you cut it yourself. And so that's where we put the sand over. So we didn't put any plants there, we just put the sand. And so then you can have this nice Zen Feng Shui raking pattern. One thing that we've learned, whoever put this garden, I didn't put the garden in, I designed it, but the person who put it in did have issues with the fountain and leakage. So remember your overspray and keep in mind of the space, like that filter fabric that was in there for the pond liner does crack and get brittle. So remember to keep those really, you have to be really sensitive to those. They do get brittle. So get quality pond liners. One thing I just wanted to show is there's that, remember I mentioned that path at Astaku that had the maple saplings that were bundled and tied together and then put on the edge? I put that here. I just realized I have a pointer, but I've been using my cane. And that's what it looks like overhead. And remember the time of the year, this garden is beautifully productive in June, July, August, September. But don't forget November, December, January, February, March, April. Okay, that is impervious surface where water comes down and sheet flows out onto the road and brings all of that sediment with it. So remember what you can put into stopping the late winter, early spring waters from eroding. And I'm just going to end, stop getting to the end here. Remember, if you put in any wood, remember, use the wood that's going to last the longest for you. If you have overgrown yews and you don't want to have them anymore, use the wood for whatever purpose, an arbor, whatever. Yew wood it's also known as taxus, is great structural wood. White cedar, fir, balsam fir, spruce, red spruce, white spruce, hemlock, and oak. This is kind of in the order of longevity for rot resistance. Larch, we forget larch is really a wonderful wood, especially with larch canker being a problem. If you have to harvest the larch, then repurpose it. Black locust is an annoying tree, but it has a great repurposing factor. And so, 5, 10, 20 years, the more the moisture, the shorter the lifespan of that wood. And on this, I just want to mention, community comes together to beautify. So if you can't hire people, if you can't do it yourself, invite your neighbors to help you out. Neighbors helping neighbors, it builds beautiful communities. It increases support, positivity, hope, which we all desperately need right now. Kindness and peace. Yes, it saves on labor, saves on time, but it builds our communities that much stronger. Thank you very much.
All the answers to all of our questions. Fantastic. I hope you enjoyed.
No, that just opened up more questions for more.
We hope you enjoyed our series, revisiting your landscape, and are excited about leaving and getting ready to beautify your own garden once you get home. Our educational programming will pick up again on April 23rd here in the Picker Room, and we will welcome Mark Hall, who will teach us about floral design. Mark Hall did the flower arranging for Chelsea Clinton's wedding, so we're likely to learn some things from him. And please mark your calendars for the Camden Garden Club's 77th Garden Tour, an event that draws hundreds of people from across the country. We have 5 beautiful gardens on that tour that will show you how people have revisioned their own landscapes. The date for that is July 16th. I know we're looking well ahead, but you know that time passes quickly. Those are just 2 of the many, many events we have planned, and we hope you become a member of the Camden Garden Club and take full advantage of the lectures, field trips, and workshops that we're excited to be offering. For more information about joining, please see Karen Cease right there and Lucy Ebert, who may have left, or sign up online. Again, thank you for coming, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.